Hello, and thank you for tuning into this week's episode of Bite-Sized Cybercrime, the podcast where we discuss cybercrimes and cybersecurity news. Have you ever gone to the University of Pennsylvania? I suspect most of my listeners probably have not, but those who have already know what I'm going to talk about, because you probably received an email titled, "We Got Hacked, Action Required." The contents of the email were strange. My friend sent me a screenshot, and it reads, "Dear Penn Community, the University of Pennsylvania is a dog-shit elitist institution full of woke We have had terrible security practices and are completely unmeritocratic. We hire and admit morons because we love legacies, donors, and unqualified affirmative action admits. We love breaking federal laws like FERPA, all your data will be leaked, and Supreme Court rulings like SFFA. Please stop giving us money." The email in question was actually sent from multiple different accounts, seemingly from department mailing lists, but also other employees at the university. The emails also seem to be going out via one of their mailing lists, as according to my friend, it's not just students and staff, but also some people who've had veterinary services done at their animal hospital who've gotten them. The university has simply asked people to disregard the message, as it's not even really a scam or extortion. There's nothing here you could fall for, necessarily. So let's unpack all that. That's pretty much all the information we know publicly, and the rest of what I say is going to be speculation unless I state otherwise, so let's just break down what could have happened here. I can already make an educated guess that this email is not from a nation-state hacker or a ransomware group. The message reads incredibly personal, so my guess is that it would either be a disgruntled insider threat or some other disgruntled alum or someone otherwise related to the university. Nation-state actors and ransomware gangs aren't going to be loud like this, and they would generally not send these messages externally to random students and alumni. If there was some kind of ransomware going on, it would stay between cybersecurity staff or even professional ransomware negotiators and the attackers. I think you could call this a case of hacktivism, which is hacking for some kind of political cause rather than for money. It seems to me like they'd be a conservative leading hacktivist based on the language around wokeness and affirmative action, and some references we'll dive into in a bit. One thing we do know is that this email came after the University of Pennsylvania declined the Trump administration's invitation to join the Compact for Excellence in Higher Intelligence program. This is a program that would give preferential funding to schools that followed certain policies. Some of those policies include freezing tuition for 5 years, limiting international student enrollment, and of course, ending affirmative action in both the hiring and enrollment practices. Looking further into the contents of the email, the attacker accuses UPenn of violating FERPA. FERPA is the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, which is a federal law that protects the data of student records. But it also gives students and their parents the right to access, correct, and have some control over these records. If you're familiar with HIPAA, it's HIPAA for schools. If you think HIPAA means that people are breaking the law by asking you if you've had your flu shot, then you are not familiar with HIPAA. The email also cites that UPenn has violated the Supreme Court ruling SFFA, which stands for Students for Fair Admissions. SFFA is a nonprofit legal advocacy organization for the purpose of challenging affirmative action. SFFA itself is not a court ruling, but I'm going to assume this is referencing the combination of court cases, which are SFFA v. Harvard and SFFA v. University of North Carolina. In 2023, the Supreme Court ruled that the admission programs at both of these universities violated the Equal Protection Clause. Essentially, this resulted in those universities having to change their admissions programs. I am not a lawyer, so take this with like a handful of salt. After reading the court documents, skimming, it was like 200 pages long, the Supreme Court decision does not necessarily mean that schools cannot consider how race has affected an individual's life experience. It's just that they cannot consider race as a specific factor as part of admissions. Like, it sort of ended affirmative action, but not really. I'm not sure if the way I explained that made sense, but basically there's nuance to it, and schools can still sort of consider race as long as other factors are considered along with race. Like, you can acknowledge someone may face certain types of hardship or discrimination that may have affected the path that their life has been on due to their race. Either way, there wasn't evidence provided for this, and now that we've unpacked all that, was there a data breach? No. At least not for now. The email provided zero evidence that any data was actually getting leaked, and there has not been anything online about a newer data breach of UPenn. The FERPA violations were not elaborated on either, so I'm unsure what specifically the attacker is alleging with that statement. My shot in the dark, assuming this is true, is that they suspect that data is not being stored correctly on systems. Maybe the encryption algorithm used is poor, or the systems themselves are unsecure in some sort of way. I'm not entirely sure, and I also do not think the attacker who wrote the email actually has any data. And the reason I think that is because there likely would have been a sample leaked with the email for proof, and, well, they also never actually said they had the data, they just said that it would be leaked. So I'm choosing to interpret that as it's only a matter of time before it gets leaked. Which, not to be a doomer, but I think that's just inevitable for any organization based on the way things are going. This is very fork found in kitchen type of news. This also may be a bit judgmental, and my apologies, but the language used in this email does not inspire much confidence that this person is an especially skilled hacker. So how did they get into the emails if I think this? Well, I'm not sure, but if I had to guess, it would be poor passwords or phishing some of the staff and department emails. If the individual is an insider threat, this could have been made even easier if they already had access to systems. However, phishing and guessing someone's password is not a particularly difficult thing to do. I have cracked passwords as someone who is not a hacker, just because they were pretty easy passwords, and maybe the policies were not being enforced, or maybe the policies aren't good enough. I would like to clarify, I've not hacked random people. I have cracked passwords as part of authorized activities via websites that teach you hacking skills. If this person was an insider threat, which again is speculative, we don't know, very good chance they're not, then they may have access to systems in some sort of way, especially if they work in the IT department. They could potentially abuse their privileges to hijack emails. That still doesn't mean they're a master hacker capable of stealing all this data, because I work in IT and I am certainly not a master hacker who could steal all this data completely unnoticed. Anyways, yeah, most of this episode was speculative, but I find this interesting because you just don't get a ton of hacks like this anymore, where it's just trolls sending mass emails out. It's almost nostalgic. Anyways, thank you to TechCrunch, Bleeping Computer, Cybernews, as well as my friend Jay for sending me some screenshots of the email. That was a really fun Discord message to get. And of course, thank you for tuning into this week's episode of Bite Size Cybercrime, and until next time, stay secure.